Yes, we're back with another rider, another episode. Today we have Holly in the house, and she's an anthropologist.
Yes.
Yeah, and she's studying a PhD. She's a very well-educated lady, and I thought I have to learn more because she is throwing loads of gems at me. So nice to have you here today, Holly.
Oh, thank you.
First of all, what do you think of London?
Oh, I love London. Yeah, I think it's great. It's so different to Auckland and New Zealand. It's just completely different over here.
Okay, that's nice. So why anthropology?
Oh, I think I kind of fell into it. I went to uni. I wanted to be an archaeologist. I thought, I wanted to go to Pompeii and I wanted to look at the ruins and things like that. And that's all in the same umbrella. And then I was sort of jumping around different courses, and I ended up in biological anthropology, which is about the way humans have physically evolved, and we're looking at all of the things that have led to us looking and behaving the way that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just sort of stayed on that track, and then I ended up taking a course on primate behavior and ecology, and it was just everything sort of clicked, and it was somewhere I could really see myself for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just with any sort of research, you just have to be really, really into it.
When did you realise that anthropology was your calling?
Probably, so I always knew I would like to be in academia, and I'd like to stay in research and study. But what I would always do would be try to imagine what kind of research, I could do. And as I was going through my degree and trying to think of these things that I would want to do, it was really, really difficult to imagine. And then as soon as I started studying primates and that sort of side of behavioural ecology, it was just easy.
Mm-hmm.
I could see every project, I could see the things that I was interested in. And so I feel like that really was that's when the vocation came in. It was oh yeah, that's what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what is an anthropologist's role?
We work in lots of different places. So anthropology as a whole spreads very, very far. So you've got all your archaeologists, social anthropologists that are doing work, you can work, that's where you're interviewing people and looking at society and things on a bigger level. Or groups of people, so you get maybe people that are doing interviews with specific suburbs in London about their conditions and stuff like that. And then you've got biological anthropologists and forensic anthropologists and things like that. Not very much like Bones TV show, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Not as exciting.
Ahead.
So basically we're just interested in how we got to where we are, and why. And yeah, so by studying primates we can look a little further back in our evolution and think about what the conditions were that led to the structures that we see in human society today.
So, as an anthropologist, would you say you believe in a supreme being, or you just believe in evolution?
This sort of outside anthropology for me, I've never really believed in higher power in that way.
Okay.
I wasn't raised religious. It wasn't a part of my life. I think I do know many other anthropologists that are religious, and you can, people always say you can't reconcile religion and science, but you can. It depends on how you view religion and how you view your science. But yeah, I guess I'm firmly on the science side of things.
Can you give us an example of how people do both?
So I think a lot of people, religious people that work in evolutionary sciences and things like that, will sort of think of it as, instead of taking the stories in the Bible quite literally and saying, this is exactly what happened, it's almost like metaphor or analogy for what they believe happened. So and it's that same thing of, it's God's will and God setting things into motion, and you can still apply that to the evolutionary record.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What have you found out about the anthropology world that you wish you knew when you had started?
I guess just how broad it is. I think people, especially undergraduate students, when you go into a bachelor's degree, you don't really, you don't hear, I mean, I don't know what it's like in England because I didn't study here, but when I was at school, you don't hear the term anthropology, you don't know what it is. And then you go to uni and you think, okay, it's all just about people, and it's about talking to people and interviewing people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wish from the get-go I'd known how many options I would have in doing anthropology and studying anthropology, because I think people think that it's very narrow, and it's actually really broad. You can work in so many different places and you can study so many different things. And as long as there's a human component, you can call it anthropology.
Okay. So with monkeys or primates, do you research in monkeys, apes, or gorillas?
Yeah, I'm studying apes, so I study a species called the siamang gibbon. They are a small ape from sort of like Sumatra and the Malay Peninsula, and they.
So not in New Zealand.
No native primates in New Zealand, but we do have them in captivity. So I'm using captive individuals.
Does that count though? Because surely you're studying their behaviour, and their behaviour is not natural if they're in prison.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of debate in that, especially within primatology and anthropology, about what is natural, quote unquote natural. But for what I'm studying, so my specific research, I'm looking at pair bonding behaviour, so close male-female relationships, and tracking the ovarian cycle and testosterone production in both individuals.
What's ovarian cycle?
So your estrogen, progesterone production, so your reproductive hormones. And I wouldn't actually be able to do that very effectively with a wild population because they live so high up in the trees, and you can't effectively
in the
identify.
canopies.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can't identify. Well, you can identify individuals, but you have to follow them for a really long time.
You have to shoot them, then tag them, or when I say shoot them, put them to sleep.
Yeah, that's
and then tag them, and then let them go on their way.
Yeah, some people will do it that way. It's difficult with canopy species like that because if you tranquilize them and they fall out of the trees, it's a little bit dangerous.
Index, yeah.
Yeah, so you try and find an identifying feature, and then you just get to know them. But you've got to be in the field for at least 6 months.
Have you done that? Been in the field for 6 months?
No, I haven't yet.
You're going to be ready for that with all the mosquitoes and the midges?
I hope so. I mean, some of the places that these species live are very high up in the mountains and the dense rainforests and things like that. So it will be a definite shock when I eventually get there.
So you're an outdoor person, are you?
Yeah.
Now I have to ask this: what does your parents do for a living?
My dad is a rural man. He was a dairy farmer when I was younger, and then he transitioned into farming maize as I got older.
Mm-hmm. Maize?
Yeah.
Is it? I was going to say that's an African food stable diet. I didn't know.
Yeah, we use quite a lot in grain and cereal. So.
Is that what maize is used in grain? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's even though I guess it's not quite the staple in everyday life that you would think it to be, but any cereal and stuff like that, they'll have maize flour or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mum worked in sort of financial admin for most of my life.
So you get it from your father then?
I get the outdoors part from my dad, but the research I definitely, and the academic mindedness I get from my mum.
Okay.
She has a master's in communications, and she's always been an advocate for studying and encouraging me to read and to explore in that way. So yeah, you get sort of like two tandem explorations, I guess.
So how long have you been studying your PhD, and when do you finish?
I started my PhD in December of 2022, and the conservative goal at the moment is to hand in May of 2026.
Okay, so you've got 2 years left.
Yeah, just under 2 years to go.
And how has that journey been mentally, and how have you managed the mental side of it?
I mean, it is, I was talking to my friends and I was called a slog, because it just feels slow and dense. You're constantly doing something. It's that same thing of because it's your own research, and it's sort of like flexible working, so
Mm-hmm.
you never feel like you're quite finished. So it is really draining. I would say anybody that's interested in doing a PhD to be prepared to just be constantly working. But then at the same time, while it's difficult in that way, it's still interesting. So there's still that sort of like passion driving. But you know, you just take time where you can to rest and relax. So I try to limit myself to not working on the weekends if I can. And you know, once I leave the office, that's it, that's done for the day, and really be firm with myself to take time out to relax and rejuvenate. And then I do things like this and come on holiday. And so I haven't actually looked at any PhD related things since I arrived on Monday, and I won't look at anything until I get back home in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just about taking the breaks where you can and making sure that you still, like, you don't get buried under what feels like a mountain of work.
What would your advice be to a younger person who's going to start doing a PhD in anthropology?
Find a good supervisor. Make sure that you've got a supervisor that you get along with on a personal level. I think a lot of people will gravitate towards the project, or they'll gravitate towards somebody that's really prestigious or they think will get them further. But if you don't get along with that person, like, you have to spend a lot of time talking to them, and they review your work and they give you feedback, and so if you don't like them, it will make that process a lot harder. So I would say maybe sacrifice the more prestigious project for a better supervisor, and a project that maybe you're a little more interested in, rather than looking for accolades and things like that.
Okay. And what's been the thing that you've overcome that's been the hardest for you?
I mean, there's the financial component.
Oh, that's a good point. If you're studying so much, you probably don't get that time to work, earn money.
So, and I mean, most PhDs do not pay very well. So, you know, like, you end up in quite privileged positions if you have scholarships and things like that. So I was lucky enough to receive a scholarship to do my PhD, but it's the stipend that I get, essentially like the salary, is not very high. It's enough to basically cover my living expenses. And then I get a little bit of work through the uni, but obviously, like, to do field work, it costs a lot of money, so you've got to try and beg people for money and send out application after application to receive funding.
How does it work on the finance scale, as in, do you, or sorry, not even finance, it's like a sponsoring, or where people give you money. Is it you pick something and you know that this is going to be worth this to this company, and they say, okay, whatever you find, we're going to help fund you because we want that data, we want that information?
It depends on the field that you're in. So some things like medical sciences might be like that. Sort of like chemistry, drug-related research and stuff like that. You might find that there are independent companies or government agencies that are interested in funding those projects.
I see what you mean.
But I think most of the process is just, you know, you set up the project that you're interested in, you start doing the research, and then you look for sort of places that are offering grants, and then you just submit an application and hope and pray that you get it.
Well, it's been an interesting interview.
Yeah, thanks for
Very,
having me.
very informative. If somebody wants to find you because they want to study your research or doing what they're doing.
I'm not on social media.
You're not on social
Not
media?
on social media.
Oh, okay then.
But yeah, if you're interested in gibbons, if you're interested in primate research, there are a number of universities in the UK that are doing work. So if you look up Oxford Brookes, they're doing a lot, and Durham University, there's big primatology out there. And those people are fantastic, and they'll be all over social media. I, unfortunately, am just not.
Okay. And the last question is, the route you took, what was the route you took from when you left school, education? Like, what courses did you do?
I went straight from school. I started a Bachelor of Arts and I transitioned into a Bachelor of Science in Biology and Anthropology. And I did a little bit of ecology and environmental science in there. And then I did my honours degree in arts and my master's in arts, looking at behaviour and space use in captive settings. And then from there I just sort of applied and continued. So I've done everything in the same university, but it is often encouraged to do things at different universities. So do your bachelor's at one and then move on to a master's somewhere else.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for that, and we wish you well.
Thank you so much.